Привет, и сегодня это второй выпуск. Сейчас прямо за моей спиной начинается открытие. На самом деле не начинается, а уже в самом разгаре. Официальная часть уже прошла, и сейчас я постараюсь выяснить, что же это, собственно, за проект. Все нюансы, подробности, какие-то организационные моменты и концептуальные. Итак, поехали.
The opening of your project, you made a big installation in garden of HGB. So, but what is this project really about?
We are celebrating this year the 250-year anniversary of the college, and I was thinking when this sort of date came up, what would be useful for the college. There are lots of projects you could do which are celebrating this kind of big number in various ways. You could have, some very representational projects. You could have books with a big spine you put in the shelf. But I was more interested in what could be useful for students, for teachers, and for the college as a whole, to consider the college as a space of debate, of interaction, of conflict, of entertainment, all of these things. So basically, at the beginning of the last semester, so it was kind of October, I was approaching a friend I had worked with in London, William Haggard. He's an architect and he teaches at the London Metropolitan University. And I was asking him if he would work with my class to develop a project to find a response to these kind of questions in the courtyard. Because this is a space in the college we have two courtyards. One is more sort of delivery courtyard, and this one is the more the use space. But if I say used, I thought it was not used enough. People were just sitting in the corners, sipping their coffee, but there was not much activity. So basically all the things we've done now are a response to bring back or to inject that space with more activity and to suggest uses of, just to display work, to have events, all these sort of things. So out of that we kind of did a workshop with William Haggard, and then we tried to find out what kind of students were looking for, what their thing was missing, etc. So in the motivation is very much fueled by a sense of a more, if you like, active community of between teachers and students alike. So that's kind of the, if you like, the social or the political background to this.
Great. How did you come with such decisions? So you said before that it was about some discussion with students, what's missing. So missing part was?
Well, there was on one hand this courtyard was not used in a very lively sort of way. It was basically kind of a space which didn't display any particular kind of communal qualities, you could say. It was a big space which just, I don't know, didn't transcend a particular, you might say, energy or whatever. So I think this is sort of the courtyard as a promise. It's kind of essentially saying, well, why don't you just do something with it? Why don't you experiment? Why don't you kind of it's quite a generous space. So many colleges would be very happy if they would possess that space.
So I need to integrate this space in life of college, in life of students, in life of art as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, precisely. And one of the things which sort of came out of the discussions within the workshop was that students have found one project which was happening previously in the last couple of years in interior space, so one room in the college, which was basically a self-organized exhibition space by students. It was part of one class, but one of the tutors provided her office space for basically being turned into an exhibition space. So this has been quite a success story as far as I'm concerned, but it was a self-organized student space for doing exhibitions. So this was one of the things we kind of picked up on, and our billboard in the courtyard now on the mobile staircase is basically a link to that history of this room 4.4 kind of previous exhibition space, which doesn't exist anymore. But I was quite keen to allow the integration of a sort of exhibition-like situation in a sort of semi-public environment, which the college is, and make that part of our project. So to say, can we integrate a space that can be used by students to display work, and now the plan is, or the concept is, to have in very short intervals different work being displayed, and ideally this would be done self-organized by students. So initially we have two works. Now one is in display now as we speak, and then in about a week or so there will be a new one there, and hopefully other students from other departments will also kind of pick up on this. Precisely.
But is it the first time you collaborated with students and with professors from other universities? For example, now you talk about London, but is it the first example of collaboration here?
I mean, collaboration is a thing which is quite often. But I mean, there's a sort of romanticism about collaboration as well. Collaboration don't necessarily work. Sometimes it's just it can also be a very representational move of saying, okay, we collaborate, this is very interesting, there's other institutions. Now, in other words, a collaboration takes a lot of effort. There's also potential for misunderstandings and for failures. And that's kind of part of try and error, what you do perhaps if you run a program like what I do with the system design class. So, William Haggard, we have worked before, about 1.5 years ago. We did a display workshop. So basically the idea was that architects would design in sort of exchange with us, display furniture, if you like, which would allow us to display work. And we kind of had an exhibition which was called News from Nowhere, which is a William Morris kind of reference in another space here in the college. And the idea was like, how can you look and display work if it's also unfinished? So we have certain ways of doing that normally. We kind of project things via a data projector, or we put things on the table, or we print things out and put it on the wall. Now, you just have to ask yourself if that's the only way of discussing work, graphic work. And the idea of having displays, or in other words, furniture, objects, where you could place things and arrange them in a spatial way, maybe that is also altering our ways of looking at the work. So that was kind of the purpose of that workshop. So just trying to find spatial devices which help an assessment or review of graphic works. And so so we had basically already an experience with working with Will, who I've known for quite a few years because I worked in my own design practice with him on some architecture project. So I kind of knew him as an architect, and I also kind of attended some reviews or crits in his own teaching capacity at the London Metropolitan University. So it's been a kind of long-running collaboration, if you like. But that also allows a kind of, if you like, say either quality. On the other hand, also a certain understanding about various values. So, but I'm also, by the same token, I'm very interested and happy in new collaborations. So this is not a pledge for the tradition of already existing collaboration, but I'm only sort of explaining why we thought that Will and some of his students were a good partner in just making that project happen.
So okay, so this time it was more about you saw this solving of problem in an architecture way. So it was collaboration with architecture professor. But why? I mean, not why, but what is the class of system design is about? In other words, today you're making architecture project, but what would be tomorrow?
Well, we are not at home in architecture. We are not product designers. We are not good carpenters. We can't build things. We are not good construction workers. So this is essentially really pushing some of the capacities we have or don't have to the very limit. So we completely went into a territory which is not ours. Now I think that's quite good. That's quite exciting, but that is also not our core expertise. One project which we've done last year was an exhibition, and we kind of worked with the Kunstverein, which is basically a gallery space in Potsdam, which is near Berlin, and we did an exhibition about graphic design and visual culture, which was called Solid and Liquid. Solid and liquid as two ways of describing our practice, and in that. So as soon as you kind of display work, as soon as you show graphic work to others, you act in a spatial environment. So it's basically a problem which we have to tackle one way or the other. We might very rarely end up with building something as quite solid and as quite profound as a pavilion. Now that's a kind of extreme. But in the exhibition space, you also have to deal with matters of display. Is it on a table? Is it on the wall? So you just really have to find ways of engaging a visitor, right? You have to engage someone who looks at it. And that would be, say, a guest or someone who's, for other reasons, part of that situation. So it's been kind of very much of an interest of the class also to tie in a graphic practice with a more spatial awareness. But system design class, I mean, the name has been a burden to me from the very beginning. This term system design is not a term which people understand because it doesn't exist as such. It's basically the brainchild of one of my predecessors, Rudi Bauer. He's a Franco-Swiss designer, and he's been running the class many years ago. And he came up with that term.